When your house is burning down and when lives are on the line, what do you care about the most? Do you care what the firefighter looks like? Or do you care if they can save your family? And this isn't just a rhetorical question. It's the reality we're facing right now across America. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, has infiltrated our most critical institutions, from first responders to the military, to the FBI and the Secret Service, and who knows how many other countless agencies across the United States government. DEI might sound like progress, but it's costing lives. It's undermining trust, readiness, and competence in the very agencies tasked with protecting us. Tonight, I'm going to show you how DEI is making America more vulnerable to actual terror attacks and how deep the rot goes, what's driving it, and what it's going to take to fix it. So let's start with Los Angeles. During one of the worst wildfire seasons in recent history, what was the top priority of the leadership at the Los Angeles Fire Department? Was it readiness, training, ensuring firefighters could actually respond effectively? No, it was DEI. The fire chief publicly stated that her focus was on hiring people based on diversity rather than qualifications. Another senior leader claimed that people want firefighters who look like them. And this is where DEI falls apart. When people's homes are burning down, they don't care about what the firefighter looks like. The only thing they give a crap about is they care if the firefighter knows what they're doing. And because of DEI-driven hiring practices, the department was understaffed and underprepared. Major failures across the board that are coming out by the minute. Delayed responses, piss-poor coordination, homes destroyed, lives endangered. To me, this is just like New York City in the 1970s when political interference in public safety hiring created chaos. The city lowered standards for firefighters and police exams to meet political goals, and the result was catastrophic. Slower response times, more fatalities, and massive public backlash. What? History's repeating itself, and this time, DEI is leading the charge. And if this can happen in Los Angeles, it can and does happen everywhere across the country. More of these catastrophes will begin to reveal themselves. Now let's start with the Secret Service. Everybody saw what happened. An agency once considered the gold standard for protection and operational readiness. This was the elite bodyguard government agency in the world. And under the leadership of Kimberly Cheadle, a DEI-driven appointment, agency allowed a president-elect to be shot during an assassination attempt. A critical device designed to protect the president failed because those responsible for it weren't properly trained, but most importantly, selected. This failure reminds me of a similar moment in history. Secret Service failings during the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Back then, it wasn't DEI. It was complacency and mismanagement. And the lessons learned from that tragedy led to decades of reforms and heightened standards. But now, those hard-earned lessons are being thrown out the window in the name of garbage identity politics. Now, I don't get political. You guys know that about me. I'm all about the security and the safety. And lives were put at risk, and the very fabric of our national security was compromised. DEI isn't just a misstep. It's a major liability. And let's not forget, recently we witnessed another catastrophic failure, this time with the FBI. A coordinated single lone wolf terror attack unfolded in New Orleans, killing and injuring innocent Americans. The most damning part, the FBI didn't have the capabilities or the intelligence to stop it, and they failed. That was their job. And here's why. The Aaron Cohen Show is brought to you by the Cherries Deep Concealment Holster. Same holster I trained Keanu on for the John Wick franchise. This thing runs BWB or below the waistband. Means it's never going to fall off you and zero digging into your gut. Also, fits all double stack 9 and 40 Glocks. You can see this thing is totally minimal. Very comfortable, fully adjustable clip, and it's ambidextrous lefties. You're covered. Also, lightning fast draw with just a little bit of training. Hit the link down in the description and grab yourself one of these bad boys. There's a bit of a lead time right now. This is a pre-order, but trust me, they're worth it. Finally carry with comfort and proper concealment. DEI-driven promotions, in my opinion, push the experienced experts out of critical roles. Intelligence sharing broke down because underqualified individuals were probably placed in decision-making positions. Because of this, proper, actionable intelligence was ignored and lives were lost because those people weren't capable of doing their jobs. And this failure echoes the intelligent lapses that allowed the 9/11 attacks to happen. After the 9/11 Commission identified a lack of communication, underqualified personnel as the key reasons for the attack's success, the FBI and the CIA worked for years to address these issues, implementing merit-based programs, reforms that improved intelligence sharing and overall operational effectiveness. Now, those reforms are being completely undone and thrown into the garbage. DEI is creating the same nonsense vulnerabilities that we thought we had fixed, and Americans are paying the price. Now, I want to say this. Terrorism doesn't always come in the form of plane crashing into buildings or complex multinational plots. You know, this isn't a novel. Sometimes it's much simpler. It's low tech, it's cheap, and devastatingly effective. And take the Los Angeles wildfires, for example. If that had been a terror attack, a single act, one match, one spark can cause mass destruction, cost billions of dollars in damage, and create psychological terror that lasts for years. And in 2018, we saw how easy it is to weaponize fire. The Holy Fire in California destroyed thousands of acres, displaced families, and caused more than $25 million in damage. And that wasn't an accident. That was an act of arson. And we're going to see more potential arson leads being investigated here. And groups like Iran's proxies don't need billions of dollars to cripple us. They need one operative, a cheap tool, and the knowledge that our institutions are too distracted to stop them. I promise you, Iran is watching as we speak. Go have a look at their X account. And instead of strengthening the agency tasked with protecting us, DEI-driven policies are lowering standards, diverting resources, and sidelining the experts who understand the threats, the people who actually know the business. And if we don't refocus on readiness now, I'm telling you we're inviting catastrophe. So I've talked about how DEI is undermining the military, law enforcement, and public safety, but I want to go deeper. And the reason why is because that's what professionals do. You want to get to the root of this thing and really dig up what it comes from, what's driving these policies, and why are they being pushed so aggressively by the far left politicians or by the left itself. At its core, DEI is rooted in an ideology that prioritizes equity over equality, identity over merit, and optics over outcomes. And here's what you need to know. I want to talk about CRT, or the critical race theory. This is the foundation of DEI. DEI is heavily influenced by what's called critical race theory, or CRT, which argues that racism is systemic and embedded in every aspect of society here. It's not about individual actions or overt discrimination. It assumes all institutions are inherently biased. Also, CRT suggests that military, law enforcement, and public safety are systems of oppression. And these institutions in the CRT worldview don't just need reform, they need to be completely dismantled, gutted, and rebuilt through the lens of equity. And so why is this dangerous? CRT undermines the principles of meritocracy by suggesting that fairness and equal opportunity perpetuates systemic bias. And so it shifts the focus from performance and competence to proportional outcomes based on race, gender, and other identity markers. This is why DEI prioritizes equity over equality. It's not about creating a level playing field. It's about ensuring that everyone achieves the same outcomes. Participation trophies for everyone, even if it means lowering the standards. I want to talk a little bit about equity over equality. And so here's the critical distinction. Equality ensures that everybody has the same opportunities to succeed based on merit. Equity demands equal outcomes regardless of the qualifications or effort. In DEI-driven policies, equity justifies lowering physical fitness standards in the military, relaxing entry requirements in law enforcement, and prioritizing diversity over skill in public safety. Example would be gender-neutral fitness tests designed to meet equity goals, which have resulted in combat units that are probably less physically prepared for the rigors of war. And once the new SecDev, Pete Hegseth, gets in there, I think he's going to be shocked at what he finds. And for law enforcement, it would mean lower educational requirements and quota-driven hiring, which will have led to underqualified officers being put in better positions, which affects the overall performance of the organization. Now I want to talk about identity politics. DEI emphasizes identity, race, gender, sexual orientation, over shared purpose. So instead of fostering unity, it sows division by focusing on those differences. And the result, quotas in hiring and promotions undermine trust within those teams and organizations. And those teams that should be focused on common mission and saving lives, whether it's protecting communities or serving in combat overseas, are instead fractured by the identity-based priorities. Are you guys a fan of Israeli special operations? Were you blown away by that incredible pager operation? Grab yourself a signed copy of my best-selling memoir, Brotherhood of Warriors. Hit the link down in the description. I've got a limited number of signed copies to go out and learn about how we train in Israel and about my time as one of the first Americans to serve in one of Israel's top special operations unit, the elite Mistaravim. This is the unit that goes undercover, dresses as Arabs to stop terrorists dead in their tracks. Hit the link down in the description and learn about Israeli special operations through an American optic. Hit the link in the description and grab yourself a signed copy of Brotherhood of Warriors. The next piece, I want to talk about moral absolutism. This might be a new one. DEI operates on moral absolutism. That's what they refer to it as, making it immune to criticism. And if you oppose DEI, you're labeled intolerant and bigoted. And this shuts down meaningful debate about whether these policies are actually effective or harmful. I'm here to tell you that they're very harmful. Look at what's happening in Los Angeles. It allows DEI to expand unchecked, even when evidence has shown it's undermining readiness and trust. LA's burning down, FBI attack in New Orleans, Trump getting shot. It's all there. We don't need to dig very deep. And DEI isn't just an ideology. This thing is an industry. Entire departments created to enforce DEI policies, diverting resources for the core mission. Look what happened in LA Fire with the chief, who's now coming around saying that she asked Mayor Karen Bass for money that was taken away. And so it's not just the fire chief who's pushing DEI agendas. It's also the mayor using the DEI ideological craziness that she's entrenched in to divert that money to other places, and not having a qualified fire chief who's got the ability to be able to stand up to that mayor. Well, you've got yourself a double whammy, and you've got yourself double safety problems. And let me make this really clear. DEI isn't just an ideology. This is an entire industry. Entire departments are created to enforce these DEI policies, diverting resources from the core mission. Some examples would be the military now spends millions on DEI training taken away from critical combat readiness, money that could be spent for exercises. Police departments hiring diversity officers instead of investing in better training and better equipment for their officers. I've been training law enforcement and SWAT teams for 20 years. You know, once you get out of that academy, all that shooting is perishable. It's the first thing you lose is your tactics. You can never stop training. So the consequence is lowered standards to meet nonsense equity goals, institutions lowering the bar, which weakens the operational effectiveness, which is how LA was able to burn. Mission resources get diverted from readiness and operational success to focus on these garbage initiatives. And then the trust, it's gone. The public sees these institutions as politicized, which we're seeing now, which undermines their credibility. So I think Bass and Newsom, hopefully they're all on their way out. But just know this, adversaries like China and Russia and Iran, they see these weaknesses, and I promise you they will exploit them. You want to understand DEI fully, you have to look even deeper. What's at the root of the root? And to truly understand that, you need to look at the ideological movements that gave rise to DEI, which is postmodernism and what's called cultural Marxism. And postmodernism argues that there's no such thing as objective truth. Stay with me here. Instead, it claims that everything is subjective, shaped by power dynamics. It has its impact DEI. Metrics like standardized tests or qualifications are dismissed as tools of oppression. This should all start to sound familiar to you guys. We've been hearing this crap for 4 years. Subjective narratives such as lived experiences and elevated over measurable outcomes. This makes it almost impossible to hold DEI policies accountable because there's no agreed upon standard for success. I want to talk about power and oppression a little bit deeper. Cultural Marxism applies Marxist theories of class struggle to culture, and that frames society as a battle between oppressors and the oppressed, just like we saw unfolding with all the nonsense targeted at Israel, an oppressive colonial state based on zero fact. The Jews have been there the longest. They come from Judea. All of the evidence is there. That's the problem with that movement targeting Israel. They don't have the evidence to back it up. They're just exploding online and running around the streets like a bunch of idiots because that's what terrorist sympathizers do. They simply cause chaos and disruption, and they hope that they'll get what they want because they're making so much noise. But it doesn't really work at the end of the day, especially when you start getting a little handsy. Us Americans and Israelis won't put up with it. How does this impact the security institutions or the public safety institutions? The military, the police, and public safety are seen as inherently oppressive. The goal isn't just reform them, it's to dismantle and rebuild these institutions based on those progressive ideologies. You guys remember the defund the police? That's all baked into this. Meritocracy is dismissed as a tool of oppression, even though it's essential for public safety and national security operational success. And that's my biggest issue. Finally, I want to talk about the monetizing of this victimhood narrative or religion. DEI has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Corporations, universities, government agencies spending millions on DEI consultants, workshops, training. There's no incentive to solve the problems that DEI claims to address because the industry profits from the perpetuating narratives of victimhood. But let me say this, DEI is also a political tool. And by appealing to identity-based voting blocks, politicians use DEI to consolidate that power. So Aaron, why does this all matter? At its core, DEI is about control. By dividing society into identity groups and eroding trust in institutions, creates chaos and can only be managed by those pushing the ideology. This is why DEI isn't just a misguided policy, it's a systemic threat to national security and public safety. So Aaron, how do we fix all this? The answer isn't easy, but it's clear, and we're already on our way. First thing is, Trump gets into office. Once he's in office, he can start to pull out all that rot. And here's the rot that he's going to have to start working on. He's going to have to reinstate that merit-based standard. Every institution under Trump must return to a system where qualifications and not quotas determine who gets hired, promoted, and trusted with leadership positions. For the military, Pete Hegseth, and he knows this better than anybody, needs to reinstate that rigorous physical standard and those combat testing standards and eliminate any quotas for gender or race throughout the entire Department of Defense and the U.S. military. For law enforcement, It's time to enforce stricter physical education, psychological and physical fitness benchmarks, those backgrounds. All of that needs to be equal. And agencies need to hire and promote based solely on operational effectiveness. If they're not good, bye-bye. Congress also needs to demand transparency about how DEI is impacting our institutions. They need to pull this thing apart and investigate it. A cost analysis. They need to know how much money is being spent on these DEI programs. I think we should tally this all up across all of our national security and public safety programs and how these funds can be better used and go back to training equipment and personnel. It's time to get the money back to where it belongs. Also, need to examine how DEI policies have affected the recruitment and retention and those performance metrics. I'd love to have a deep dive into that and see what that looks like. And then finally, DEI training emphasizes differences, creating that division instead of cohesion. And we need programs that focused on that shared mission and purpose again to get that unity and that trust back together. And then lastly, Trump's got to put in really good leadership. He's already started to do it. Leadership that gets it, that understands the danger here, and that they're willing to, go up against those on the opposite side of the aisle and challenge that status quo to prioritize or reprioritize mission over optics and replace all those who are too invested in all this DEI garbage. Start voting them the hell out. So let me close it out with this. Here's the hard truth about all this. DEI isn't about progress, contrary to what the radical left believe. I believe it's about control. I believe it's about dismantling the systems that keep us safe and replacing them with chaos disguised as fairness. That's my bottom line belief. And our enemies are watching, and they see the cracks in our foundation and the erosion of the standards, politicizing of our law enforcement agencies and national security institutions that were once the gold standard of excellence. They're not waiting. They're going to be exploiting it. From terror cells, cyber attacks, arson, espionage, every weakness we create becomes their strength. And with these borders open for the last 4 years, get ready. And this isn't just about politics. It's about national security and public safety. So whether it's a firefighter showing up at your burning home right now in Los Angeles, or the cop standing in between you and a violent criminal trying to kill you, or the soldier defending your country from enemies abroad who've committed terrorism, competence, readiness, and unity are what saves lives. America doesn't need quotas. We don't need performative BS politics. We need excellence. We need leadership under Trump that's willing to make those hard choices to prioritize results over that garbage rhetoric and to put the safety of this amazing nation above all else. And if you're tired of seeing our country weakened from within, then it's time to speak up. Do me a favor, share this video. Start holding your leaders accountable. Newsom, Karen Bass. Because the longer you allow DEI to continue to infiltrate these critical institutions, the more we risk everything. This is the greatest country in the world. And for the sake of our safety, for the sake of our future, let's get back to that. The clock is ticking and it's time to act. I want to thank you guys for watching this one. I'm going to come back to this one with more information regarding the fire and the progress that all these incredible first responders are making. These are the unsung heroes right now of Southern California. And I'll come back to this one. I want to thank you guys for watching this episode. If you guys are a fan of the show, do me a favor, hit the link down in the description and join my Season 1 sponsorship team. It helps support the show, helps keep the lights on in the studio. We're independently produced. Hit the link down in the description. Grab yourself a mini sponsorship package. They start at $25. Join my Season 1 sponsorship team and join the mission. And let's keep fighting this thing together. I'm Aaron Cohen. You're watching The Aaron Cohen Show. And I will catch you guys on the next one.